Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our very first Fireside Chat. My name is Heather Flattery. I'm the Manager of Membership and Marketing here at SOFI. Thank you all for joining us, and we are very excited to introduce our spring interns. So we are going to dive right in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who is speaking with us throughout the Fireside Chat today, and then we may or may not have a few more participants join us, and this should be available on our website within the next few weeks, so keep an eye out for that on the SOFI page. First and foremost, we have Patty Fountain. She's achieving her Bachelor of Science with a focus on community health promotion and attends Illinois State University from Normal, Illinois. Next is Kit Drewiski, a Bachelor of Science in Public Health major with a concentration in community health education at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And lastly but not least, Talea Berry is getting her BS in Health Education, and she is a certified CHES, as is Patty, over at Morgan State University. That's in Baltimore, Maryland, just around the corner from us here in Washington, D.C. So we're going to dive right in. We have a few pre-sorted questions that we're going to run through this afternoon, just so you can get to know our spring interns, a little bit better. And then we'll have a brief question and answer session at the end. So to get us all started, what interested you about the Society for Public Health Education internship program? And anyone can start.
Oh my gosh. Well, what interested me is that I had an amazing experience at the 69th Annual Conference in Ohio last year. It was my first time at a professional conference in my exact field, and I was able to go as a presenter. During that experience, I received a lot of positive feedback from SOFI staff, SOFI attendees, SOFI members, and I fell in love with the overall culture of SOFI. So approaching my senior year, I decided that I wanted to work somewhere where I've already met the staff and I've already benefited from the work that SOFI does, and I just really wanted to be a part of something that I felt was bigger than me, and I wanted to stay as well connected to SOFI as possible as I continue through my education and professional career.
Awesome.
I would go off of that. Similar to Talea's experience, I attended the Advocacy Summit held here in D.C. 2 years in a row. And I just really got the feel for the personality and the standard that SOFI has, and I was very inspired by their connections and their passion and just overall advocacy for the profession. And like Talea said, I just felt like I was home. I was understood, and it was a really good experience to be exposed to the profession and other people's passions.
So my experience is a little different. I had no prior knowledge or interactions with SOFI prior to coming here to the internship. So I was just looking around for internships throughout all organizations, and I found SOFI, and so I learned a little bit more about them, and I really loved the idea of being able to move to DC. I also love the idea of being able to see community health from a membership view as opposed to working in a health department. So this was interesting because it allowed me to work with all sorts of professions, so academia, practitioners, medical, all kinds. And then I also really wanted to learn planning skills, which coming to SOFI gave me the ability to do because as interns we are able to help planning in the annual conference.
Excellent. So that actually leads me to another question, and I also just want to make a quick point of note as we move through the questions. Go ahead and announce yourself for our listeners so that they know who's speaking, just because we can't see each other. So I just want to make sure that we touch on that. So we're actually going to go ahead and sort of jump into another question that I had a little further down the line because I think it piggybacks off of what we were just talking about. But internships are often a learning experience. And so what advice do you have for someone who's looking at pursuing an internship in their field of study?
So this is Patty. The one piece of advice that I and the rest of my cohort received from our professors is to treat internships like real jobs because you want to apply for things that you think you will love. And you'll also learn what you do and do not like. But the other greatest piece of advice that they gave us is when interviewing, also interview the place that you're going to be at because this is a partnership, it's not a dictatorship, so you need to be able to not only work well for the organization, but the organization needs to be able to work well for you.
I love that, Patty. This is Kit speaking. I guess I would encourage someone to who's interning in their field of study to really just figure out what pieces of the puzzle that you're bringing as well. So take some time to reflect to understand the pieces and the strengths and maybe even the weaknesses that you're bringing to the table. And also it's a great opportunity to figure out what you don't like to lead you to what you might like.
I agree with both you, Kit and Patty. This is Talea. My advice would be make sure you do your research and you plan ahead. For example, for the past 2 years, we were told your senior year you're going to have to do an internship. So all throughout my undergraduate career, I was looking at different organizations to see what internship opportunities they have, reaching out to people, maybe even going on YouTube or looking at blogs. Also, it's really good if you're working on any research to try to find an internship that aligns with your research or your passion, because that's really going to be the determinant on if you're happy at your placement, and that could be your career right there. And the last thing I would say is just to make sure you think through the logistics, and make sure that what you're signing up, you can actually do what you're saying that you can do.
That's great. So that's all really good advice, I think, for folks who are maybe still students or young professionals looking at still expanding parts of their career and where they might want to direct their attention and continued education. So now I want to take a few minutes, and again, this is Heather. I want to learn a little bit more about you personally. So can you tell us, I'm the kind of person who really likes to maybe find a mission statement or a mantra, or look at a poem for a month or two to kind of make sure that I'm on track with my goals. Is there anything that you all stick to or something that kind of drives you? Let me know a little bit about maybe a mantra or a phrase or something that you live by.
This is Talea again. My personal philosophy statement is inspire the dream, be the change, create leaders. And that's something that I live by, and something that whenever I'm looking for a job or an internship placement, I look at the description and I see if I can apply my philosophy statement to it. I want to be able to ignite minds and basically be the person that's like, you know what, I met Talea and this is the path I went down because my interaction with Talea was so great, and I think that she had great ideas and I want to piggyback and add on to it, because those are the type of people that met me and kind of steered me into my field and made me so passionate about it.
I think that's wonderful, Talea. This is Patty. The phrase that I live by is one that my mom had said to my sister and I growing up, and it's the worst they can say is no. And so basically I just take that to mean is to take risks no matter how far-fetched that they seem. It's actually a conversation we had here at Sophie the other day. When looking at jobs, sometimes you think you only have 6 out of the 10 qualifiers, but that doesn't mean that you can't get the job. So sometimes we tend to hold ourselves back because we don't think that we can do it, and we're afraid of getting hurt or being rejected. So by using this worst they can say is no mantra in my life, it kind of deters me from not going after things that I could want.
Well, I might have 2 more mantra statements after that. I love both of those. So thank you for sharing. My personal quote that I've been really kind of analyzing lately is, it's better to be interested than to be interesting. And this is significant to me because it shows a person that they're actually being heard versus you being only concerned about what they might think of you. So often we get caught up in what others perceive us as, especially when we're in a transitional period like we are, graduating college and deciding our next moves. And we get really wrapped up in the thoughts of like, am I the right fit? Will they like what I have to say? Have I done enough? Will my experience impress them? But if you show a level of genuine interest in the topic and in the people and let your passion shine, your belief in yourself has a really distinct sound.
That's important to note. Thank you all for sharing those. And so kind of in addition to that, if you have something or someone that shared something with you, I'd also like to know who you have in your lives that are leaders or someone that inspires you. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe someone in your field of influence? It could be someone in your degree program. It could just be someone in your personal life or someone in the media. Tell me who inspires you.
So I'll kind of start with mine because I think in talking with Talea and Kit, mine is more abroad. person who inspires me. I wrote and said Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think that especially with everything that's going on with her life and her books and the movie is about her, I'm learning so much more about who she is as a person and what she's done, not only for her field but for fields overall. And so I think she inspires me because she's not afraid to go after what she wants. She's honest with her about her opinion, and she stands up for what she believes is right.
I would say at the moment, my favorite leader would be one of my professors, Dr. Yeboah. I see her as an innovator, and she's very inspiring. She is one of the gems at Morgan State University, and she always maintains a level of respect for the students. And I feel like she is the embodiment of my philosophy statement. She inspires us, and she's also realistic with us. She doesn't put any expectations on us that are beyond our limits. She asks us how we are feeling, which is something that I've noticed not a lot of adults do with college-age students. They just assume millennials are lazy and they don't care. But Dr. Yeboah, Dr. Davis, Professor Harrison are one of the few professors at Morgan State University who really care about the students and strive to prepare us but also be transparent with us. They've never hidden their career aspirations or the pathways that they took to get to where they are, and I'm grateful to have met and experienced leadership skills from all of them. I can say that they are leaders in creating the next generation of progressive public health and health education professionals.
I love that, and I think mentorship and leadership is so important, especially in this time period when there are so many influencers on social media and things. This is Kit speaking, by the way. I would say a leader that I really look up to is a man named Carlos Galvez. He started a smoke-free stove project in Guatemala called La Chapina Bonita Stove Project. And I've been involved with that project for the last couple of years and started a partnership with my university. But the reason he inspires me is that he is a person who truly had everything that you could ever want. He had successful businesses, he had a beautiful home, a great family, yet he recognized that many people had a massive need for cleaner and more efficient cooking, so they didn't have to cook on open fires in their homes or schools and endure the awful health problems that contribute to, and the contribution to deforestation and climate change. And so I would just say it takes a special person to see that and oftentimes continue that, because a lot of the time we have the idea and the perception of how it will benefit us. And I would say with every part of this project, it is for the people who are receiving the stoves. So just that servant leadership and selflessness has really been impactful to me.
Excellent. And Kit, I think what you touched on, I think servant leadership is extremely important, particularly in the nonprofit arena, which we find ourselves in here at SOFI. I think a lot of health educators are sort of circling around this nonprofit space, although many also find themselves in possibly academia or government work. So it's really unique to have a variety of different perspectives, both when you're seeking out mentors and also just in the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. So that's important to keep in mind. Next, I want to ask you all just a little bit. So I'm sure there's a lot that you learned being an intern over your last 12 or however many weeks here. Can you share with the listening audience maybe what some of the skills or takeaways you had that would be beneficial for someone looking at the internship experience or even looking to their first job? What is something that you took away that you think will benefit you moving forward?
This is Kit again, back so soon. I would say looking back at what SOFI has given me is a massive sense of gratitude for one, but looking at more tangible skills, just the ability to navigate an office climate, manage my time on projects, and when you're pulled across a variety of departments, that's a really important skill to have. And just taking on like kind of ambiguous topics or projects that are given to us and learning all you can and transforming it into content and giving your own kind of touch on it is a great skill, some skills that I've definitely learned here at SOFI, so I'm thankful.
Kit, that I would agree with everything that you said. This is Patty. I feel like some of the top 3 things that I learned from being here at SOFI is learning how to manage a large group of people and how to help keep people on track. Because like I said previously, we do get to help plan with conference, at the annual conference and the annual advocacy summit. So with that comes many different groups that need help managing. So that was a skill that I felt I was able to take from Sophie. I also learned for myself personally, kind of along with Kit, her time management, but also for me personally, it's okay to ask for help and to set boundaries for work that you can say yes or no to. Even though you're an intern and you don't always feel like you have that voice, you need to make sure that you're using it, because that's not only a skill that you will need at your internship, but as you continue on with jobs. And so that'll be something that when going into an interview you can talk about. I learned time management, and I learned how to set boundaries for myself and with my coworkers. And finally, I just kind of learned some areas of public health interest for me and what areas that maybe I'm not quite as passionate about. So that helped me figure out where I wanted to go after this internship.
Patty, I think you brought up a great point about setting boundaries. At the beginning of this semester, my professor, Dr. Yaboa, who's actually my mentor, she said, before we even dove into the assignment, she said, you need to learn your capacity. And it was just a general statement to the entire class. And I wrote it down, and I didn't think much of it. I said, I know I need to do it, but I don't know how. Sophie taught me my capacity and my boundaries. And not only did it teach me my capacity and my boundaries, it told me how to communicate them. Like as Kit mentioned, there's a lot of time management that comes into place. And there's a lot of teamwork because you get exposure to so many different projects. And coming from the type of leadership I had at my undergrad university, sometimes it went without saying that there was a certain level of quality your work was expected to be. So even if you felt like, I would get a B on this paper just because of who your professors were, you really wanted to go the extra mile and you really wanted to perform and impress them. So being in the professional world and knowing that you're not going to be able to have that same quality if your hand is in all these different pots and you're saying, yeah, I can do it. Somewhere, somehow, you're gonna mess up. So it's best to just communicate, like, I can do this, but can I have an extension? Or how would you like me to prioritize my day? That was one of the questions my mentor advised us all to use when we're overwhelmed with tasks. And the last thing I would say, one of the major skills Sophie taught me was critical thinking and just planning out your day and your task. Just figuring out like the logistics of how you can tackle certain things and when to ask for help, where to find help before you ask for help. Google.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm actually going to move us on to another question, too. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, and I think that we're also kind of surfing through a lunch break, so I want to be respectful of that. Could you all share just a little bit? Sophie, as an organization, is a nonprofit. We have a variety of different aspects that are maybe unique to this environment. What is something that you took away that maybe was unique that you got here dealing with a nonprofit?
Ooh. So this is Patty speaking. I've worked with nonprofits for a couple years, and so each one is different, and you get a different feel from each one that you go to. So Sophie specifically, something new to me with working with nonprofits was what it's like to work with federal grant funding and how to work with those organizations to not only do what they need you to do, but also make sure that you're putting out quality work for your organization. So learning how to make this partnership happen with rules and regulations, but also so that you're making sure you're putting out some of the best work for your organization. And you also learn how to work with a small staff, because most nonprofits do have a small staff. So like we've talked about previously, everyone wears a lot of hats. This is a saying that gets used around this office very often. And so when working with a small staff, you do it the best you can and you do as much as you can, but again, you have to realize that sometimes it just may not get done the day that you wanted it to get done.
This is Kit piping in here, and going off of what Patty said, and I didn't have that nonprofit experience prior to, but you really do get a taste of everything. We have had the opportunity to work across all departments of Sophie on a variety of projects, so we were able to see all of the hard work and dedication it takes to maintain a well-rounded and impactful organization. So that's definitely a golden nugget that I will take away from Sophie.
And this is Talea. One of the things that I got from Sophie is just seeing the freedom that you're able to have in a nonprofit as far as, lack of regulations, but then also seeing how the financial aspect can prevent a lot of that freedom that you do have. So it's an intricate balance between what you're able to do and what you can actually afford to do.
Right. Those are all really good points. I think something else that's relevant that I know a couple of you brought up throughout the last few weeks here is that we do span the whole nation of the United States. So what's interesting about that is sometimes you have to factor in something as simple as time zones, right? When you have to schedule a conference call or when you have to schedule a meeting. The East Coast runs pretty early, but then we want to be done by 5, 6 o'clock or something like that. Well, people on the West Coast are just getting their day started or getting into lunch. So I think that that's also something interesting that this office happens to deal with and involve themselves with because of that relationship that we have with both our partners and our internal membership. So lastly, I just want to ask you, when you look ahead, and I know this is kind of an interview question, so feel free to take a minute on it or think it through, but when you look ahead 2, 5, 10 years, when you look ahead for yourself in your career or your profession, what do you think will have the biggest impact on you as a public health professional? And maybe that's something you took away from Sophie, or maybe that's just some bit of personal knowledge or growth that you've had over the past 6 months or something like that, but let us know kind of what that looks like for you.
So this is Patty. Personally, the thing that oftentimes, no matter which profession or where I'm at in life, whether it's professional or personally, is the passion that I see other people having for whatever it is that they're doing. So public health is so broad that you just are able to see so many passions in so many different aspects because public health touches upon majority of majors, I suppose, is the best way to look at it. So engineering, science, math, education, everything, business even, because without health, those other things could not flourish because you're not able to focus on the things that you need. So seeing how broad public health is and how expansive it is and how much there is to learn from other people is pretty much what is impactful to me.
Awesome.
Similarly to that, I guess I would say I love the field of public health, and I think that's obvious here, but the biggest impact is, like Patty said, we have the ability to be a jack of all trades, but we can also be a master of something. And so having that flexibility to hop around between being a tobacco prevention specialist or a lactation consultant or just having those different, or in government, that flexibility is very inspiring to me. And also just knowing that we have a very distinct skill set and that you can have pride in and know that if you did choose to go into business, it would be applicable too.
So just to piggyback off what you all are saying, my semester was unique in the sense that I had another internship with a government agency. I was interning with HRSA, and I did mostly administrative work. And while the financial compensation was great, I found myself feeling unsatisfied and kind of underwhelmed with the day-to-day functions. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. And the more I looked at my personal philosophy statement and looked at what I was doing, it wasn't aligning. Now, I know that being in the government could catapult me to where I want to be long-term, but for right now, I know that once my internship ends with Sophie, I won't find life satisfaction out of just being at HRSA simply because I'm not inspiring people, I'm not sparking minds, and I feel like I'm in a position where I'm young enough to reach my peers and bring them in, but I also have the experience to connect them with the professional world, and that's the space I want to be. I want to be a bridge, and I want to give back the same feelings that several professionals have given me of validating my work and supporting me and helping me and just looking at public health issues and looking at different problems from a different perspective.
Awesome. Well, once again, just on behalf of Sophie, this is Heather. I want to thank you all for the tireless work that you put in, the effort, the project management, as I think many of you or all of you touched on. That really is something that I'm learning more and more is a team effort. I think that project management is certainly someone that a manager or a director facilitates, but it involves all of the people in the project in order to move that forward. So I appreciate all that you have given to Sophie and to me as a colleague, and I think that this has been a wonderful experience. We're going to spend the last couple of minutes here. We've got about 5 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and thanks for participating in this fireside chat with Sophie.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Did anyone have any questions? Or anything that maybe any three of you that you think we might have left out?
I think something that's important to just reiterate is basically keep in contact with the people you meet at your internship. I think it's something we may not have touched on in some advice we may have given, but I think it's really important because your internship is not a place where you want to cut ties. It's something that you want to keep networking with and use for future. There is someone who works in our office here who was actually previously an intern with Sophie. So it very much is possible, and all of us, I'm sure, know someone who's at an internship now that has received a job offer from their internship. So making sure you're making the best of it, and even if you aren't coming out of it with a job, keeping those connections, because everyone knows somebody, and 86% of jobs are done through networking. So
that's awesome. That's a really good point. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and end early. Thank you once again for joining us for Sophie's very first Fireside Chat. We are excited to have more of these. They will be on the last Friday of every month. You do have to register or pre-register, so please look on the Sophie calendar for more information. And thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Heather.